Good day, everyone. Today I'd like to talk about non-action verbs. So we will look at what it means when we say a verb is a non-action verb, and also how we can use it. We look at the differences between regular verbs and non-action verbs. So let's get started. So before I move on, actually, there are two names or different naming for them. We can also call them stative verbs or state verbs, or non-action verbs. So you might see this or that. Now, in general, verbs are two kinds. One kind is what we call action verbs or dynamic verbs. That means these verbs, the subject is actually performing some action or moving something or doing something. The other kind is what we call stative or non-action verbs. In these verbs, the subject does not perform any action, doesn't move anything, it only shows a state or a way of being. Now, what we need to know though is that some verbs can be confusing in terms of action or non-action. It's because sometimes it could be action verbs, sometimes it could be non-action verbs, depending on the sentence and depending on the subject. Alright, so as we said, non-action verbs or stative verbs mean that the subject is not doing anything really, there's no action, there's no movement. Example, we have the words seem, appear, exist, possess, and so on. There are many other examples. If you do a quick Google search, you'll find a number of non-action verbs. Now, what we need to know though, and what's important, is that non-action verbs do not take the ing form. Let's look at an example. The car looks new. So, the subject here is the car. The verb is looks. The car looks new. I can't use the ing form here, even if I'm talking about something that's happening right now and only right now. So, that's incorrect. Another example, they own a house. Even if I'm talking about right now or at the moment, I can't use the ing form with the verb own because it's non-action verb, because this subject, they, is not doing anything really. Or this subject here, car, is not doing this verb. The car is not looking. Now, the other important element or the other important point that I need to learn in terms of non-action verbs is that they do not take an adverb like normal verbs. They take an adjective. Let's see how that works. Example, it sounds great. I don't say it sounds greatly. So let's say someone gives you an idea. They say, let's go watch a movie after work, and then you say, this idea sounds great. It sounds. Again, this it is not doing the sounding at all. This is just a state. Or, the surgeon seemed careful. I don't say the surgeon seemed carefully. The surgeon seemed careful. Again, with non-action verbs, we don't use an adverb. Now, sometimes it gets confusing. Is this verb that I'm looking at action or non-action? Is it stative or is it dynamic? What would I do in that scenario? Come on. Okay, so some verbs, like we said, can be both action or not action. If you're confused, look at the subject and ask yourself, is the subject really involved in any action? Is the subject really moving or doing something or not? If it is, it's an action verb, like any other normal verb. If it's not, then it's a non-action verb. Look at some examples here. The soup tastes great. It's a non-action verb because the subject is not doing anything. The soup is not really doing the tasting. This is just a state where the soup is tasting great. However, in this other example, we have the same verb, taste and taste. In this one though, the subject is doing something. He is tasting the soup to make sure it has enough salt. So, this is the normal action verb because the subject here, he, is actually doing the verb tasting. Let's look at one other example. Wow, the dress looks great on you. That's non-action verb. That's a non-action verb because the subject dress is not doing this verb. However, if you consider the next example, I am looking at the dress in the mirror. That's an action verb. It's a normal verb. I am looking at the dress. I am doing something. All right. So, that's what I have. Come on. All right. That's what I have for you today in terms of action and non-action verbs. Thanks for your attention. I appreciate receiving comments and feedback in the following address. The PowerPoint show of this presentation will be also posted. Thanks for your attention one more time.